Edinburgh. I'm Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Knowledge Exchange and Enterprise. And essentially what this means is that I'm responsible for research activities across the university, and that includes oversight of all doctoral studies, either supervisory support, development, experience, and progression. So I'm just going to say a little about the university. But first and foremost, a very warm welcome to our research degree opening evening to the University of the Arts London. This is the largest tertiary provider of creative education in Europe, and by far the largest provider of education and training for creative professionals in the United Kingdom. We're ranked top 2 in the world for art and design, a measure of our reputation. We're very proud of that, and also a measure of the quality of our activities within the university. Now, the university is made up of 6 colleges: Camberwell College of Arts, Central St. Martin's, Chelsea College of Arts, London College of Communications, London College of Fashion, the Wimbledon College of Arts, and each of these have their own nuances, but we very much work collaboratively across the university. We have about 100 members of our professorate, and this is a body that's made up of professors and readers across the university, and essentially they kind of lead and drive our research agenda. Now, speaking specifically about our research agenda, one of our strategic goals is to solve significant social and economic issues through the transformative impact of creativity. And this really has reinforced the role we've played in supporting the creative economies, both regionally, nationally, and also internationally. And we deliver this through 4 university institutes and 9 research centers. And you're going to hear a bit more about this during this webinar. Underpinning all the research and impact that we do make are our PhD students and the research community that they are involved with. Now, you're all here listening to this webinar because you're considering what contribution and impact that you could make to one of the fields of research at UAL. I am certain that you'll find this open evening informative. I absolutely wish you the best of luck with your selection and your journey into research. And hopefully, if you do join us, I would very much look forward to seeing some of your work in the fullness of time. So it's a very warm welcome for me, and again, the best of luck going forward. Can I pass?
Thank you, David. Also, I'm Professor Malcolm Quinn. I am chair of UAL Research Degrees Subcommittee. I'm also an Associate Dean of Camberwell, Chelsea, and Wimbledon. Next slide, please. That is me. Next slide. Now, a brief note on what a PhD is. A PhD is a contribution to knowledge within a particular specific field of inquiry. So part of your job, if you're applying for a PhD, is to identify your field of inquiry and also the experts in this field who might supervise you. Every PhD at UL has a director of studies and other supervisors, could be 1, could be 2, who are responsible for the academic progress and pastoral support of their students, and who provide the necessary guidance and support to enable their students to successfully complete their research. So if you do a PhD with us, you'll get a director of studies and at least 1 other supervisor, sometimes 2. PhD projects are completed within the prescribed period of study. Normally that's 3 years full-time for a PhD, 2 years full-time for an MPhil, part-time PhDs, 5 years for a PhD and 3 years for an MPhil. That's the normal time. Now, many of our PhDs are practice-based, so they employ art, design, and performance practice to conduct research. Next slide. And one such practice-based PhD was completed here in 2016 by Samson Kambalu, now Professor Samson Kambalu at the Ruskin School, Oxford, who, as you can see from this slide, has just won one of the commissions for the 4th plinth in Trafalgar Square. And my point here is, first of all, that our PhD students go on to do great things. The other point I'm making is that PhDs in art and design and practice-based research in art and design is now part of the lifeblood of the creative industries, of the art world, and beyond into other disciplines. So I think it's important for you to understand that, that PhDs aren't simply academic. They are about an engagement with debates, with practices, with ways of doing things in art, design, and performance. And after your research, that knowledge you've gained, those insights you've gained, feed back into disciplines and fields of inquiry that in which people conduct their practice. So well done, Samson, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this looks when it's in situ. Next slide, please. Now, again, I'm underlining this point. We're looking for students who are interested in pursuing research projects within the fields of inquiry that we have the expertise to supervise. Ask yourself, who is the specialist in my field of research at UAL? So the first bit of research you've got to do when you're thinking about a PhD is research on us. Who's going to supervise me? Now, as David said, we've got a lot of professors, readers, other staff who can supervise. Here's just a small selection from the letter B. We have Professor on the left, we have Professor Shahida Bari, we have Heather Barrett, we have Dr. Karani Baraka, and then we have Juja Bartlett, Dr. Juja Bartlett. That's a tiny selection of 4 people who might be able to supervise you. But your job is to find the person or persons at UAL who can do this. It's so important that you come to us with an idea of who's going to supervise, because if you don't, there'll be no match. There'll be no sense of dialogue between you and us. Next slide, please. As David mentions, we're one university. We've got 6 colleges and 19,000 students. We are very big. Thank you. Next slide. And as David mentioned, we have 4 university institutes. Now, an institute is an umbrella structure that embraces a lot of activity, and including some of our research centers. So the research centers sit under the institutes. We have 4 institutes: an Institute for Decolonizing Arts, which has recently landed a very large grant we're all very pleased about, an Institute for Social Design, an Institute for Creative Computing, which has its own students. In that sense, it's slightly different than the other institutes. It also has its own students, and also an Institute for Fashion, Textiles, and Technology. Next slide, please. Now we come to the research centers, and I'm going to mention those one by one. The first research center I want to mention, and research centers are focuses for particular kinds of research. And the first one here is After All. After All is based at CSM, Central St. Martin's, and it's a research center and a publication. You'll see there After All books. And the focus of research is on contemporary art and the public sphere, and particularly a lot of interesting work in exhibition histories. Next slide, please. And the next research center is based at LCC, London College of Communication. It's a Centre for Creative Research in Sound Art Practice, or CRISAP for short. And the focus there is, I mean, really, CRISAP has led the world in research in sound art and sound arts practice, and it's also linked to a BA and MA course in sound art. So there is, to use that cliche, a lot of vertical integration between the BA, the MA, the PhD, and the research center. Next slide, please. The next center is the Centre for Fashion Curation, based at LCF, London College of Fashion. And as the title suggests, it looks at the history, theory, and practice of fashion curation with a critical lens. Not simply, it's not just about exhibitions, it's about a critical look at them. Sorry, that's fine, thanks. Next slide, please. Centre for Sustainable Fashion, also at LCF, looks at design for sustainability and the application of design for sustainability to aspects of the creative and business aspects of fashion. Next, please. Design Against Crime, based at CSM, Central St. Martin's. Again, as the title suggests, the focus is on design for crime prevention and for community safety and well-being. Next slide. Photography in the Archive is based at LCC, and a lot of interesting work from this centre on the photographic archive and the place, or how looking at the archive changes our understanding of photography and the understanding of public photography, professional and amateur as well. Next slide, please. And this is a centre based at my own college of CCW, Camberwell, Chelsea, Wimbledon, and it's the Centre for Circular Design. And it looks how design practice, things like making shirts, as shown here, can inform and develop a circular economy for materials, textiles, and fashion that will contribute to saving the planet. Next slide, please. And finally, another research centre based at CCW, Transnational Art, Identity and Nation, which looks at, again, history, theory and practice of transnational art migration in a global context. Next slide, please. And that's just a web link you can go to look at these research centres, institutes, so forth in more detail. But finally, I will just say, please, 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 do look at our staff, do look at who might supervise, and come to us with an idea of who you might want to supervise you. Thank you very much indeed. Jane, over to you.
Thank you, Malcolm. I'm just going to run through the UAL application process and some of the sources of funding that you might be able to apply to us. So looking at this, you know that I don't have a background in graphic design, but I have tried to simplify the process into a way that's quite easy to see at a glance. So the first thing we ask applicants to do is to read the application guidelines on our website. It's on our PhD application page, and if you read all the guidelines and the information on that page very carefully, then we would like you to prepare a research proposal following the UAL guidance. Again, this guidance is on the website. It's a very clear proposal, and it outlines exactly what we want to hear from you when you submit to us. Do use the subheadings enclosed in these guidelines. These will really help you to articulate your research clearly to us, and they'll also help the people reading your proposals and considering them to understand very quickly what your research is about. Before you get in touch with us, we ask that you have a proposal. It doesn't have to be the final proposal, but a full draft ready to share with a potential supervisor before you get in touch. We can't really give you feedback on your proposal or discuss it with you until we really do see a full draft. Also, as Malcolm has already said, do check out the UAL research website and researcher profiles. By looking at our research profiles, you'll get an idea of what research we do, which colleges those that research is based in, and those researchers, and also of who might be an appropriate supervisor for you. Oh, I was also just going to say, do check out the portfolio of our research students are also on the website. Applications for 2022-23 applications to UAL are to be submitted by 10th November 2021. If you particularly apply to this deadline, if you wish to apply for AHRC funding. Our other deadline is the 19th of April 2022. And all this information is actually on the website listed at the bottom of the page there. So anything you don't remember, you can access there. Next slide, please. I'm just going to talk a little bit about our AHRC studentships. UAL, where we are very proud to be members of the Techne Doctoral Training Partnership. There are 9 partners in this doctoral training centre. We're partnered there, you can see, with Brighton, Brunel, Kingston, Loughborough, London, Roehampton, Royal Holloway, University of London, Surrey and Westminster. You can get more information about Techne at the web link on the bottom of this page. Next slide, please. This slide outlines the UAL process for Techne applications. Before you apply for Techne, you need to hold an offer of a place at UAL. This is exactly why, if you want to apply for Techne, you need to apply for the November deadline, because you need to have that offer in place before you apply to Techne. Techne applications to UAL should be entered on the Techne FlexiGrant portal by Friday, the 14th of January 2022. From getting an offer from UAL before Christmas, you'll be able to work with us to develop with your potential supervisor to develop your Techne application by the 14th of January. As I said, these applications should be entered on the Techne portal, and the web link for the portal is there. The reason why we do ask to get your applications in before we have to do the final Techne submission, that's later in February. This is because we get a lot of applications for Techne. We can actually only submit 9 to the final Techne deadline. So we do have to scrutinise the applications sent to UAL and agree which ones will go forward to the final Techne deadline. Next slide, please. Well, Techne is not the only funding that UAL seeks to get through its PGR students. We're always looking for funding opportunities for our applicants and also for our continuing students. And some of these include collaborative doctoral awards. Now, these are these are awards where UAL will be working with an external partner who will not be a higher education institute. Examples of our current partners we're working with on collaborative doctoral awards are the Tate, British Library, Museum of London, Google, and Unbound. These are awards where UAL combines with the partner, creates a project that both are looking to develop, and then we can submit this to an AHRC group to hopefully be selected for an award and with an award to advertise. So do keep checking our PhD and MPhil funding page for opportunities. Collaborative doctoral awards opportunities tend to start to come out in January, so that's definitely a good time to be looking at our website. We are hoping to secure some, so do look then. You can also look at the Guide to Alternative Funding, which is on the web link on our fees and funding opportunities web link, which is there. This is also where you will find any other funding opportunities, so do keep checking that link. Other students, of course, students do also come with funding, staff development funding, and some students get funding from companies who are interested in their research, and they can bring that with them. Do let us know if you've got funding organised, because we can work out how we can get that started for you at UAL. Next slide, please. For the last number of years now, the government has introduced doctoral loans. These are student loans for PhD level qualifications lasting up to 8 years in all subjects. They're up to £1,265, and they're not means tested. That is for the whole duration of your PhD programme. And English resident UK nationals aged 59 or under without a Research Council studentship are eligible. They're open to students studying at any UK university with the ability to award PhDs, and they can be combined with a master's loan debt. Again, the website for the UK for the government loans is on this slide. Next slide, please. Any other questions that don't get answered tonight, or you think aren't appropriate to ask us tonight, or occur to you after the evening, please do get in touch with us at researchdegrees@arts.ac.uk. The PGR team are here to support you all the way through your postgraduate research journey, and that is from inquiry right through to award and alumni. So do get in touch with us. We are very happy to help. Thank you for listening. Hope to hear from you soon. You're now going to watch the presentation by Daniella Jenkins, a Year 3 UAL PhD programme. As I mentioned earlier, Daniella is unable to be with us this evening, so unfortunately she can't answer any questions. If you do have any for her, you can submit them and we'll try to forward them on. Thank you.
Hello and good evening. My name is Daniella Jenkins and I am a doctoral candidate at the University of the Arts, London. So I, as you can probably tell, am actually a mature student, and I came to my PhD after a career in social policy and financial services. And my work focuses on pensions, and specifically the gendered aspect of the UK pension system. And what I want to do with my work is to make a case for a feminist pension or feminist pension policies. So in terms of what my work does, I focus on the gendered nature of the UK pension system. It's located in the field of pensions policy and pensions inequalities, but really draws on the ideas of design and design in policy, which is a sort of emergent field which UAL is actually quite deeply embedded within. And it's also concerned with institutional change and an anticipatory approach to policy design. So my work you can find out about through my website, which is the Feminist Pension Project, but really is located in the idea that we can build equal futures and that there is a possibility to build equal futures. And so within that, although I'm not an artist by background, my work is really situated within the practice of social change and within the Social Design Institute, which is also based at UAL. This question about design and how design can be applied, really the breadth of that, although it expands from an academic perspective, UAL has really embraced this, I think, with partly funding research like my own, but also looking more broadly about the ways in which our work can affect change in the world around us. And so this sort of slide speaks to my own desire to bring about institutional change through focusing my own design practices on the redesign of our institutions. And so through my work, which is now quite well developed, so sort of 3 years into my PhD process, I've done a number of things through sort of exploration, not just through my reading, but through exposure to research from researchers at UAL to researchers sort of connected to the UAL community, I've been able to develop a methodology which is located within institutionalism, but also draws on ideas linked much more to the logics of design and art and generative work. So through the use of scenarios and using that sort of more forward-looking approaches to really examine and question the ways in which we construct and understand and make sense of a quite tangible policy area like pensions. This is just a quick sort of output from my work, which looks a lot like a systems map, and in some ways is. So again, building on the idea of how we could break down our understanding of and really re-examine through sort of a very human-centered qualitative approach, the ways in which these different interactions build up our current pension system. But, as I said, not just to problematize this, but to really look for practicable actions that we can use to actually implement and bring about change. And so really to sort of conclude, my work, both intellectually stimulating and engaging, and has brought me into contact with amazing other organizations and agencies, and really I think is an example of a kind of sort of practice, not necessarily led, but work that is located within the actualities of change. And so with that, I've been able to work with financial services organisations like Scottish Widows, for example, the Women's Equality Party, UAL Women of the World festivals, the insurance industry, advertisers, really testing and talking about the sort of issues and the ways in which we can reframe and think about how we could bring about positive change. And so that is a sort of direct, tangible result of my research work at UAL and sort of being embedded within the sort of research communities that UAL is able to access as well. So I mean, to conclude, I think having started this journey, perhaps without a full idea of really what was involved in terms of a PhD, I have come to really value the rigor that comes through, but also the opportunities to take risks, both with my subject and with my approach to it, and to be quite playful. And so I think UAL really gives that opportunity through sort of a research approach to be quite playful and experimental, even with a subject that might seem as sort of dry as pensions. So hopefully that gives you some degree of introduction to how I've experienced the UAL sort of research community, and perhaps give you some ideas of what research at UAL might look like. Thank you.
Someone is asking that they think of applying to the distance learning mode, but they don't hold a student visa. And they're saying if they apply for the non-distance learning mode during the 2 years of studying, will they be able to go back to do some research or prototype in their home country?
Okay, so just a little information about the new distance learning mode. It's the same course as the normal modes of study, but it is entirely online. This course is designed for people who wish to remain in their home country and study remotely. You don't need a student visa for this course because you're not in the UK, so you're not studying in the UK. If you decide to apply for the distance learning course, you won't be able to visit the UK for the purposes of study. So you won't have access to on-site resources, libraries, any of the UAL buildings, and you won't be able to have in-person supervision, but you will have access to all of our online resources, which will allow you to study remotely. If you're applying to do the normal modes of study, so you're intending to be in the UK on a student route visa, You can go home for small amounts of time to do research. The UKVI policy is quite strict for international students around your study. You have to spend most of your time in the UK. You have to have between 10 and 12 contact points each year, in-person contact points. You're allowed to go home or elsewhere for short periods for vacations of up to 2 weeks. Any longer than that, you have to have an authorised absence. Authorised absences can be up to 4 weeks. Any longer than that won't be authorised. They would normally be for activity related to your studies, perhaps, or they might be something to do with your personal circumstances. On top of that, you would normally only have one of those a year. On top of that, students can apply for one study away period of up to 60 days per academic year, which would be taken in one block. And that's specifically to undertake research connected to your PhD. All of these things have to be applied for in advance and approved, and we have to regulate that and record that. If you'd like any more information about this, I do understand it's quite complicated. There is information on our website, and you can also contact us directly on our email address, which I think we will circulate to everybody at the end. To ask us any individual questions, because I do understand it's quite complicated and it might be sort of dependent on your individual circumstance.
Okay, Thanks, Emily. Thanks. Just one more question about international fees, I think, that we'll deal with here. Somebody's asking, can we clarify that EU students with settled status will pay home fees?
Okay, again, this is quite complicated. So with the EU settled status and pre-settled status, normally students with settled status would be eligible for home fees as long as you are resident in the UK for the start of the course, and you have been resident in the UK continuously for 3 years prior to the start of the course. However, there are caveats around that. It's not that straightforward. So what happens is when you apply, each student is individually fee assessed. You'll be asked to complete a fee status questionnaire and an immigration history form. And we'll decide that at that point. But normally, yes, for settled status, you would. Pre-settled status, that's a bit more difficult. So pre-settled status, you still need to meet the other requirements for home fee status. So you would still need to have been resident in the UK prior to the start of the course for 3 years for primarily non-educational reasons to qualify for home fee status. If you haven't been, it also depends on where you were prior to this and where you would have been if you hadn't been in the UK for educational reasons. Again, that's really quite complicated. If you're not sure and you'd like a bit of advice before you apply, you can email us and we'll do our best to help you. However, we can't formally fee assess anyone until you've actually submitted an application, because we require you to go through and fill in certain forms and provide us with specific information. But certainly happy to give you a bit of advice around that and help you as best we can. I see there's actually another question on there about funding for the distance learning mode. Distance learning mode, you can't apply for Techne funding if you're doing distance learning, because Techne require you to be in the UK for the duration of your studies to be eligible for that funding.
Okay, so question here for Agnes, I think. Someone whose research includes digital fashion and music with metaverse, they are thinking they would be best to apply to LCF, but possibly cross over to LCC campus. Is that correct?
I'm reading. Hello everyone. I'm just reading the yeah. I mean, again, one of the thing that we do, the many things that we do at the university is have what we call cross university supervisions, whereby depending on the expertise needed for a particular project, we can bring in someone from, let's say, the field of fashion from LCF, but maybe supplemented by someone from another college. So in the context, I would have to know more about that particular project, and by all means, drop me an email if you want to have a chat about that. But yes, I think we would certainly find the idea is to find the right supervision and the right supervisors with the right expertise to support the students as well as possible.
Thanks, Agnes. Thank you. I think might ask Pratap if he could possibly answer this initially, and then I think it might be over to the other colleges. Pratap, someone is asking what sort of teaching opportunities are available.
Jen Pratap's not actually with us at the moment, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was like,
Jane,
Jane,
I can answer that.
I'm sorry, yeah. Thank you.
I can answer that, Jane. Sorry, Jane, do you want me to answer that question?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Oh, sorry. You said Angus. I was waiting for Angus to appear. No worries.
That's great.
No. Well, we are very pleased. Right. Obviously, if you can teach during your PhD up to a point. If you're on a funded PhD from one of the research councils, then there's a limit beyond which they advise you not to teach. If you are funding yourself, you can teach while you're on your PhD, but of course, the same limits are sensible to observe. Now, what we also have at UAL, which we're very proud of, is something called the Graduate Teaching Scheme. And what that is a certain amount of money that is provided from college funding for PhD students in that college to teach into courses and programs. Now, this isn't a lot of money and you won't make a living from it, but the great thing about it is it allows you to, people who haven't done much teaching, to get into teaching. There's a bit of training that you have to do beforehand, by the way. And it also allows you to teach from your research into courses, which is the real magic of it. So the Graduate Teaching Scheme is a bit of money, not very much every year, given certainly in CCW and LCC, I'm not quite sure of other colleges, for students to teach into courses. But apart from that, you can top that up with associate lecturer funding. And also, some of our PhD students have gone on from getting GTA funding to associate lecturer funding to getting permanent posts. So it can be a route into teaching with us on a permanent basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Perhaps I could ask Angus to answer this question. Got a query, wondering if it is common or possible for a PhD student study under the supervision of someone from UAL and someone from another university.
Thanks, Jane. I didn't hear a little part of your question there.
No, we've got a query. Is it possible to study at UAL under somebody's expertise at UAL and a supervisor from a different university?
Yes, in principle, it is possible to have a supervisory team that's made up of both supervisors from UAL and external experts at other institutions. There's also another category of support that you can call upon, which is someone who's called an advisor. So they might not be with you throughout the entire trajectory of your research, but they may be there at different points in time. And the advisor could be quite an interesting role to add to a supervisory team. But yes, in principle, as long as the research project supports it, there is a possibility of having external supervisors as part of the team.
Thank you. Thank you, Angus. We have a question here saying, is there studio space available for practice-related PhDs in fine art? Malcolm, that might be.
Yeah, well, again, this differs from college to college, but certainly as a rule, no. We don't provide studio space, certainly at CCW, and I think at the other colleges for individual PhD students. What we do have is we're a very large university with plenty of bookable space. And I know that there's, in fact, one just opened today in CCW, a PhD student exhibition in one of our exhibition spaces. So we have a regular CCW, regular annual exhibition of PhD student work. Other colleges do as well. But as far as fixed studio space goes, no, unfortunately not. No.
I've got a question here, which I think might be best directed to Katerina for Central St Martin's initially. Someone is saying that they hope to to further their research in interior design. Which campus would they be best to apply to? Which college would they be best to apply to?
Thank you, Jane, and hello, everyone. I think that it would depend on the proposal and on what aspect of design. If the person who asked the question would like to send me their application, I can have a look at their proposal, I can have a look at it and give them a more accurate answer.
Thank you, Katerina. Thank you. Is Thanasis with us? Sorry, I can't see the list of who's with us.
I am here. Indeed.
Oh, hi, Thanasis. Hi. Excellent, excellent. We've got someone asking, if I struggle to find a supervisor, is there any help from the research centre?
Yes,
I suppose that could be the college as well, actually. Yeah.
I think, well, the point is that the first point of call would be the website and looking through the profiles. But if it is difficult to identify an academic that would match the project, and if you're certain that, you know, within the college expertise or within the university expertise that academic should exist somewhere, you are still able to email the chairs of the individual research sub-degree committees of the colleges for advice. So at the main page where all the information for application is, at the bottom of that page, there are some email addresses where you can contact people directly. I mean, for example, I mean, I'd be very happy to answer questions around academic profiles in CCW and try to matchmake, you know, the subject area with an academic. But yeah, in general, it's much you know, more efficient if you look at the profiles on the website and search through there.
Thank you. Thank you, Thanasis. Actually, there's another query here for CCW, so I'll direct this to you while you're with us. It's what sort of a commitment would there be to attend seminars on site? There would be a practice-based fine arts and also have studio and family commitments.
Yes, this is a good question, and of course things have changed quite dramatically over the past couple of years for obvious reasons. The seminars that are specific to the college and CCW in that case are all online at the moment. And I think we intend to keep this online for the foreseeable future and until things are a little bit more settled. So there will be a possibility to attend all of these without having to travel to the college. I believe that, and I think Lucy is here as well, I believe that renewal is the same for this year. So the seminars that are university-wide, again, can be attended online. There are positive and negative things about online attendance, of course, because as far as I can tell, the participation has increased quite dramatically with online seminars. But of course, you miss this sort of the direct communication and the sense of community. So for next year, at least, I think most of these seminars will be online.
Thank you very much, Tanassus. Thank you. Agnes, I think one for you. If you've been out of academic environment for over a decade, can your referees come from a workplace context?
Can you say that again? I can't find the question on the list.
No, if someone has been out of the academic environment for over a decade, can their two referees be from a workplace context?
Absolutely, as far as I'm aware, yes. Yes, they can.
Excellent, thank you, thank you. There's one here for you, Malcolm, I think, please. Are different material workshops across different colleges available to all students?
In theory, but really, we organize things per college, and every college has worked very hard to make connections between PhD students and workshops in that college. So I would say, unless you've got a compelling reason, I wouldn't stray beyond your own college. But it may be that your director, excuse me, director of studies will, if you make an argument, say, look, I really need this thing at another college, might be able to help you access that, but I wouldn't rely on it.
Thanks, Malcolm. Thank you. I think there's one here perhaps for Angus, please. Someone is asking for the definition of practice-based or non-practice-based research.
Hi, Jane, thanks. That's a really good question. It's also a really tough question to answer. I think there is a very bureaucratic and administrative response to that question, which involves making a difference between the word count that you're expected to generate when you produce the thesis that comprises both the practice and the writing. If you choose to go down a practice-based route, then the amount of words that you have to do can be reduced, but not always. I've had many practice-based students who do extremely long and wonderful PhDs, but in principle, you're allowed to reduce the amount down accordingly. But in terms of the practice theory division and the split between the two, this was a subject that we had yesterday at our student forum at LCC, and it generated a lot of discussion. And one position that was adopted was that sometimes even a thesis-only student is working through practice-based methods. So even if they're not submitting practice as part of their thesis, they may nevertheless be using practice, such as graphic design, as part of the portfolio of analytical tools that they use to pursue their research questions. So in principle, in my opinion, and my perspective is that it should be up to the specific student to define their own relationship between those two components, the practice and the scholarly. But in terms of the UAL's regulations, where it becomes significant is in relation to the word count that you would have to do. But having said that, and going back to a point I made earlier, many practices that are almost the same length as a thesis-only submission. And you can also shift. I've had students who've been practice-based, but have then shifted to thesis-only. So it's really for me, everything comes down to the research question, and it's at the research question that these kinds of issues, I believe, get resolved.
Many thanks, Angus. Katerina, I think there's one here that we could ask you to answer if that's okay.
Sure.
So someone is asking if we could speak to the application evaluation process. Aside from the things that we've already addressed, in other words, who actually looks at the initial applications, if potential students are included in the shortlist and the interviews?
At CSM, and I can talk for the process of CSM, which I believe is quite similar to the one in other colleges. First, Dr. Maketa Urbinova, who works with me as a PhD coordinator, and myself read through all the applications. And then we share them with a potential supervisor, those who are indicated in the form of those who we believe could have the necessary expertise in the proposed project. And together we assess the proposals and decide whether we feel that we wanted to invite the candidate for an interview. And normally we invite the director or potential director of studies for the interview, and sometimes also the potential supervisors. And either Maketa and I will share the interview, and on the basis of the application and the interview, then we will decide to make an offer.
Thank you, Katerina. Thank you. A lot of the other questions here are about fees, which I think a lot will have been covered already by what Emily said has already said earlier. Anything that isn't covered, we will be going back through these, and we will develop a Q&A that answers the more generic questions, and we'll be putting that onto our website. So as we're nearly at time, I think there's someone here who is asking about tips for a good research proposal application. What do we look for? Tanassis, would you like to answer that question as our last one, please? Might be a good note to end on.
Well, I can try anyway. So tips for good applications. I think, I mean, you know, as has been mentioned already, the match between the supervisor and the supervisory team and the subject area is quite important. So I think that's something that we would certainly look for a good application. The role of practice is really important. If your proposal is practice-based, and sort of a clarity on where the practice will contribute. Other important points is why your research questions are current. You know, why now? Why is it important? And also some sort of explanation of the context of your proposal. So show us that you understand the field, that you have read a little bit, and the research questions are not just randomly picked. They are the evolution of your reading. Yeah, you've understood that there is a real need for that work. Another, simple things as well are important. So the consistency of formatting, make sure that the word limit is not completely out of what we're suggesting. All these things are quite important when there's sort of dedication and the fact that you have gone through the instructions. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add something. I hope that was a little bit helpful.
No, that was great, Thanasis. Thanks. I mean, I normally break this down into 4 simple questions. One is, what do I want to find out? What do you want to find out? Second of all, why is it important to find this out? Which is Thanasis mentioned. Why now? Why is it important now? Third question, how am I going to find it out? If I'm going to do text-based, why text? I'm going to do practice. Why practice? What kind of practice? That's the methods and methodology question. Then finally, what kind of outcomes am I looking for? Am I going to contribute to academic thinking or to policy studies or to art practice? So what do I want to find out? Why is it important? How am I going to find it out? And what are the outcomes?
Thank you, Tanasis and Malcolm for those answers. We're now at the end of our evening. Thank you all for coming. Malcolm or David, would you perhaps like to thank our audience for attending as well?
Well, is David there?
David, Malcolm, would you?
Well, I would. Well, first of all, thank you, Jane, for hosting. And thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. And we're looking forward to seeing your proposals for PhDs with us. And we're very excited to see them. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Good evening.